Welcome back to the Two Tone Report. I'm Ryan Smith. The guy to the right of me, instead of on top this time, is Ethan Jacobs. We're here for part 6, episode 6, part 2 of rating the rookies from the 2025 Titans draft class. And Ethan, man, we're talking about these fourth rounders here. Talking about these fourth rounders, and had a lot more production than I think most fourth rounders would expect for on the offensive side of the ball.
Indeed, there was a lot of stuff that these fourth round picks had to go through, and a lot of responsibility on them.
Oh yeah, big time. So let's go ahead and dive into those. Alrighty, we're back. When I move to the new one, we're going to be messing around, or I'm going to be messing around with a lot of these graphics here for the time being, the next couple of weeks, month even, to kind of get things down. And it'll look a lot different a month from now than what it does right now, but this is what we've got. So let's go ahead and start with these fourth round picks. Going to start with the first one, Jim Ray DK, the all-pro returner, and was a big part of the Titans offense for this season. So Ethan, I know what my grade is. I could tell you automatically, but I just want to hear your thoughts on him, man. How did you think his season was, especially with him being a fourth round pick?
You know, this is a pick that when we drafted him, I was certainly surprised because I knew we were going to go receiver. I thought we were going to draft Alec Iomanner here. We got lucky and drafted him later, but we'll get to him in a minute. Um, so, 6'1". I think he's about 210 or so, 205. He's got crazy speed, 4.3 speed. And when we drafted him, I figured he was going to be a return man, which is definitely needed. Our return game and the special teams game has been so bad for the probably last in the NFL under Colt Anderson and that other douche who's now in Atlanta. I forget his name, but he destroyed Ryan Stonehouse's career.
Oh, I remember that. Oh my god, I remember that.
But yeah, that was awful. So
Blew
it's
up his
been
entire
probably
leg, pretty much.
4 years of just awful since Khalif Raymond, who is now with the Detroit Lions, left. Our return game has been awful. So, figuring that he was going to be a return man, I was excited to see him, and he put on the fireworks early. In punt returns, he had 23 punt returns for 398 yards, 2 touchdowns, with a long being 90 yards. And then on kick returns, 62 kick returns for 1,588 yards, 0 touchdowns, but a long as 71. And then if you want to factor in his just offensive, his yards in total, which I think I didn't add like 17 yards from his rushing. He wasn't a very good
Yeah,
rusher.
but say not really much of a factor there. Just kind of look at his receiving, and the return yards is what everybody's going to look at.
Yeah. So he had 48 receptions, 423 yards, 4 touchdowns, and played in all 17 games. That means a grand total of, without those like couple yards rushing, of 2,409 yards and 6 total touchdowns. That is, I think it broke most records for a rookie. I think all records for rookies for us. I think it broke the records for punt return and kick return as a rookie. He's got great size, great speed. Bones Fossil came in here from Dallas, and it was like, Brian Callahan, you got to hand it to him. He definitely tried to upgrade this coaching staff around him. And again, I feel like Brian Callahan's going to get a chance somewhere, maybe. I don't know, there's some stuff that's pretty bad. Yeah. But he definitely brought in some quality coaches. He did. There's plenty of people that have been retained, very well respected. Maybe he's just a horrible head coach. Who knows? But yeah, Bones Fossil being retained by the current head coaching staff is great. Hopefully we continue to see more development from Chim. There's only one negative I have, somewhat. Not even really a negative. For being a fourth-round pick, having this much production in the offense is great. But I can't give him an A+ just because when he was on the field, he wasn't the biggest factor, like, ever, A+ to me has to be, okay, you come in and you're already almost a borderline Pro Bowler and everything you do. I gave it an A for this draft grade just because he was somewhat limited in the rushing attack and on the offense. Everything else is A+, but just because He wasn't the greatest receiver of all time, ever drafted in the fourth round, which is a little bit of a stretch. But just like let's just say, if he had 700 yards and 7 touchdowns, it would be an A+ for sure, in my mind. So, but this is just an A. Probably Borgonzi's best pick in the later rounds. Super happy with it. I am so glad I don't have to worry about that nightmare anymore. What are your thoughts, Ryan?
I disagree with you. I think it's an A+. I think it's an A+ draft. If you can find a pro or an all pro anywhere on this team, it doesn't matter whether it's special teams, offense or defense. As a rookie in on day 3, that's an A+ pick to me. And you said
I can
it.
see
The
that.
special teams was awful in the years prior, and now with DK back returning punts and returning kicks, it is completely. It's really given the Titans a massive advantage in the special teams, but they just haven't had. So this is an A+ for me. I understand that offensively wasn't really the best. I think he's kind of split the difference between these 3 guys in yards and catches, and well, he had the most touchdowns out of the 3, I believe, but just yards wise was below Ellick and then above Gunner, and we'll talk about both of them in just a second. But I just think if you can find an all-pro on day 3 here as a rookie, and it doesn't really matter if it's special teams or offense or defense. Obviously, offense and defense are going to be a little bit better, but still, finding a all-pro level guy in the 4th round, that's an A+ for me, because there were many opportunities for teams to go take him, and I get why they didn't. The measurables were fine, and the production was
Production was a little low.
not
It
great.
wasn't great.
But then again, with Florida over these past couple of years, and I know he was at Stanford as well. I believe. No, that was Alec. He was maybe Wisconsin. I can't remember which.
Wisconsin.
But I was about to say it was one of the red schools in. I guess I would say Big Ten, but Stanford's in the ACC now. The California team is in the Athletic Coastal Conference, but we're not here to talk about that. Either way, you get a guy in the 4th round who's an all-pro. I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but you get a guy in the 4th round who's an all-pro anywhere, that's an A+ for me. You can't really put it any other way, because you don't expect 4th rounders to have immense amount of success anywhere, realistically, unless it's a guy like DK who's going to be a primary punt returner. He's going to be one of the, I think out of all 3 of these guys, you see on some of these bad teams or some of these rosters that are just a little bit more devoid of talent, you'll find more lower round picks who are able to go out and make a name for themselves in a situation in which maybe if you look towards a better constructed wide receiver room in this case, but a better constructed roster, they would never really get an opportunity outside of, I think DK's the only exception because of what he brings to the table as a returner. But normally these guys don't get this sort of, these amount of snaps, these amount of reps on the offense. So out of all 3 of these guys, he seems like the one who's going to get phased out the quickest out of the offense, just because of the production woes. And I think with Gunner, he's found his role just as a whole as an NFL player here in year 1. I don't really think that's going to change at all, even if the Titans decide to go away from Chig in this offseason. And then with Ellick, he has just more upside, I think, than what Jim has. But still, to find an all-pro guy in round 4 and to make the impact that he did on the first special teams, like you said, had the 71-yard kick return, 2 punt return touchdowns. It's you just can't figure it any other way than an A+ for me. I think it's just a home run pick in the 4th round.
Yeah, I mean, I think just for me, and I mean, I don't know if this is exactly correct. I am pretty sure he's one of, if not the only rookie All-Pro in the league.
That sounds about right. I'm not 100% sure, but
I don't know if Carson Swessinger, the linebacker for the Browns, made the All-Pro. I do not know. I don't want to say that. Maybe I know so. On like, I am pretty sure Jim is the only one to be a rookie to make the All-Pro, which is fantastic. If I were to separate like the special teams from offense, I would say it's an A+ in special teams and a B- in offense. And I guess if you're just solely going on what he was drafted for, I feel like he was certainly forced into a role because our receiving room was so bad. I can understand the argument. I'm going to stick with my A just because I think he has the talent to be more of an influential player on the offense eventually. Uh, I think it's all about you want a great. I think we've been trying. My standard has been going back and forth a little bit. Sometimes looking at the future, sometimes I'm grading it now. I think for the future there is room for growth. I think if you give him an A plus, it sort of limits, in my mind, what he's capable of eventually doing. I feel like he could eventually be an A plus with just a little bit more production in the offense. That's why I'm keeping it as an A. But still, is Borgandi's best pick, my probably favorite pick other than Cam. Uh, it's been amazing to watch him. He's been, you know, it's just been a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
I kick return stuff is so much fun. It's I'm happy with this pick. Very 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 happy.
No, and I get where you're coming from with it, but for me, the way I'm looking at this is you get guys day three, and even if it is, Jim, who's an early fourth round pick, or some of these guys who were maybe drafted midway through the fourth round, could have been day two, like late day two picks, but ended up getting taken in the fourth round. My thing is especially when you get later, and we'll talk about that in this next episode with those final couple of picks, fifth through the seventh round. But my thing is, you get a guy day three. The expectation shouldn't be for them to be a focal point, to be the number two, number three, number four wide receiver, especially when you're looking at this obviously offensively, because all three of these guys were offensive picks and not on the offensive line and not in the running back room. When you get a guy day three, you're not expecting him to, just break out and have the level of production that you're maybe expecting from, a high-end first-round pick, or even a early day two pick in the second round. You are expecting somebody who's going to contribute a lot on special teams, and a guy who you might throw in for a couple of unique packages, or just a depth piece is kind of what you're looking at. And for a guy to not only be a solid, solid offensive player for the most part. I know the stats won't ever blow you away, but still 4 touchdowns on the year is not terrible. It's just the special teams for me. For him to be that much of an impact player immediately in the special teams and completely flip it on its head, you can't turn me away from an A plus. And I think that's kind of going to be a consistent thing for me. Not necessarily an A plus because these last two guys aren't all pros, but it's going to be they're fourth rounders who had pretty decent production for being a fourth rounder, right? For being somebody who you just don't really expect to ever play a role in year one. Like, these guys get drafted. I know Alec's one of those guys who's like, you get drafted off of your potential, and to see your floor be like this is very impressive. So that's why I'm doing that. Moving on, though, to Gunner. I think he played out his role really well this season. What are you thinking?
I loved the Gunnar Helm pick. I thought he was going to mesh really well. We had gone many years without a solid tight end option that could also block. It was either we had a blocking tight end and a move tight end, and you either had to have them on the field at the same time, or you just didn't really have a great option. So he combines that into one person, as a tight end used to be for a very long time. He can block. He's got great hands, big frame, 6'5". He's 240. This is safety net, and that's the perfect pair. There's a couple things that a young QB will never be mad about, and that's having a solid tight end and a good running back, and of course offensive line. It goes without saying.
Oh, yeah.
But, this has been. He was great with Cam. There was many times he had some great catches up the sideline, almost some almost toe taps. There was one that was almost an incredible catch, but his foot barely hit outside of the line.
I think I remember seeing that. Yeah.
The San Francisco game was his best game. I think I mentioned it when we were talking about Cam. There was a great throw up the sideline that I was like, oh, it's gonna get picked, but Cam just got it in there, and it was a touchdown. Or I don't know if it was a touchdown. I think it was maybe Gunner came through. No, that was against the Colts. That was the touchdown. But the biggest thing for Gunnar Helm is, does Chig move on? Does he become the main guy? I would prefer to keep Chig, especially with all the money we can throw around. According to Spot Track, Chig's estimated contract is going to be about 3 years, 23 million. And I would say Spot Track is pretty on the money. Uh, they're pretty close. Most of the time, it's up or down a couple million usually. Um, but I've done some research into Dayball and what kind of tight end he prefers, and it's definitely more of the Gunnar Helm realm. You'll need to block. You have to block because Dayball is a big run game guy. So Chig being a move tight end, I'm not sure is going to be super popular in the offense room. Uh, so this could be a great opportunity for Gunnar Helm to keep developing as a blocker and a pass catcher. I gave him okay, let's just go through the stats real quick. 44 receptions, 357 yards, 2 touchdowns, played in 16 games. The only really negative on the stat sheet is he had 3 drops, which is kind of strange for him. I wouldn't say that is a characteristic he carried over from college. I think there was just a lot of quick passes coming hot out of Cam's hand, and sometimes that's tough.
Yeah.
Cam's got an arm. But I mean, 4th round, pick 120. You couldn't ask more. You couldn't have gotten more out of this guy. Like he did his role extremely well, and you talked about that a second ago. I can't remember the last time a 4th round rookie came in and was this impactful, this immediate, like this quickly, and this many guys.
Yeah.
It's
you don't expect it ever. You don't expect it from you'll have your outliers. I'm trying to remember when guys like Buka and Alvin Kamara, because those are the 2 that are popping off my head right now. That guys like that can come in and be an impact as quick as they have. And
Amon-Ra.
Amon-Ra as well is absolutely a great example of that. But for all 3 of these guys, just to see him come in and play meaningful snaps and play a meaningful role in this offense, and albeit offense wasn't very good, but still to play a meaningful role in the offense, you just don't really expect it out of these 4th round picks for the most part. And most of the time when you see it, and I do think it was sort of the case this year, most of the times when you see stuff like that, it's not necessarily because they are out of this world crazy. Sometimes it is, like Amon-Ra, but most of the time it's because the roster just isn't built especially well, and that's because have a new GM, previous ownership, or not ownership, excuse me, previous regime of front office didn't do a great job in building up talent, whether it be through free agency or the draft, and then you get thrown in with a pile of shit pretty much. And it's no offense to the offensive guys on this roster, but it's kind of how it was. I mean, you look at these offensive playmakers, especially in the wide receiver room, guys like Van Jefferson and Tyler Lockett and Calvin Ridley, all of them were duds.
James Prochet.
All of them were duds this year. I mean, seriously, and especially in comparison to these 3 guys that we're talking about right now. They were all duds, especially Calvin Ridley. I understand he still had decent stats. Not really, to be honest with you. He was hurt a lot, dropped a lot of passes.
Broke his fibula.
This didn't look all that great on top of the injuries as well. But with Gunnar, for me, and we'll get your grade here in just a sec, but Gunnar, for me, I think that if they do decide to, I think they should keep Chig. I do agree with you there, because I don't necessarily ever see Gunnar being a true tight end 1. I don't think and it's what I was talking about when we first started. I think he found his role very quickly, and that you can't say that about a lot of guys, especially 4th rounders. I think he found his role in the NFL, which is a safety net for quarterbacks, and a guy who can come in and not be a liability blocking. And you're going to play a really long time doing that at the tight end position, and I think he found his role really quickly, which is great for Tennessee. It's great for him. It's great for Cam. It's great for everybody when a guy finds his role, and it's a productive role as well. I can tell you how many tight ends make a career off of that. I mean, a bunch of guys who just are Hall of Pretty Good eligible make a career off of that, and I think Gunnar has the potential to be that sort of guy who can be a tight end 1 in the future, but a very fringe one, not somebody who you would sit down and say, I'm going to pick him over Travis Kelce or George Kittle or Brock Bowers. You wouldn't do that, but you would sit here and say, I'm not going to look at replacing Gunnar Helm, unless you just ask for 20 million a year, and I'm gonna say you can go kick rocks, pal. But the role that he kind of built out for himself, he found his role. Like I said, a big safety net. 44 catches, like you said, on 55 targets. So over 80% of his targets went for catches, and albeit I looked at it, it's like 8.1 yards per completion. So absolutely a check down guy. I think check down merchant is basically what is pretty much what he is. But still, to find that role alongside, basically what some of these running backs are, like Tajay and Tony Pollard, being guys who can go to as check downs and pick up a couple yards to make it whatever and manageable, is a good thing. He found his role in this offense, and he found his role in the NFL. So for me personally, I think it's an A pick because he got good production. He found his role, and it's just not something you see very often coming out of fourth round picks. It's just like Chim, right? He found his role. He is a special teams guy first. He's probably going to get phased out of the offense whenever they find a little bit more talent. I know there's potential that Tennessee could go wide receiver on day 2, whether it's Jeremy Bernard, Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper Jr. And I think if you were to get those guys in there, you're phasing out Chim out of the offense just because, those guys they're more talented in an offense, but when it comes to special teams, he will always have a role, and I think that's the same thing with Gunner. You can bring in maybe more athletically gifted tight ends that can go stretch the field a little bit more and not necessarily be a guy who is going to, be like Gunner, just a primary blocker. Can block, but not a primary blocker. But to have a guy like Gunner on a fourth-round contract is never truly going to be super-duper expensive, even with the salary cap going up. I don't know if you saw it. It went up, projected to be about 301 to 305 million. So salary cap going up alongside all these other things. It's never going to be super-duper expensive, and he'll always have a role in the NFL until he retires. So I think it's an
Yeah.
A. I have him as an A.
I mean, I've got a B plus rating. Great pick for the fourth round. I think I disagree with you. I think Gunnar Helm has potential to be a much better tight end than his role currently is. Just some of the catches and some of the, soft spots that I've seen him find are just, it's stuff that you can expect to grow with time as well. And he's only probably going to get better at that, especially with competent offenses and growing chemistry with Cam. I feel like he could make a major step. But if he sticks with this role and this is what it is, it's a B plus. That's because I'm grading him for what it is now, even though I've talked about the future. I just keep going back and forth, but I just feel like with room to grow, he could eventually be something really talented.
Oh,
I mean, he's got a 106.6 passer rating when targeted. I mean, he was just it was just enough room to make it comfortable for the QB, and it's just that gets better with time. I think he is going to be. I even wrote down earlier has potential to be the most important piece out of this bunch. They're going to grow together, and my prediction is that he will be a much bigger piece than Chig ever was. Chig's flashy. Chig is not an every down tight end. The Gunner has the ability to do that. So that is my opinion, a B plus. We'll see though. I'm excited. Either way. See, here's the thing. I win, whether he develops or not. I can't lose. Exactly. Like it doesn't matter to me. Like if this is his ceiling, oh no,
it's a solid ceiling for a fourth round guy. Like to be tight end 2, maybe you send him out there to be a starter for a run heavy offense like what this Dayball offense is probably going to end up being, especially. And I know we talked about this a little bit, and not to go off track, but draft wise, if they do decide to trade back and pick up a couple of picks for 2027, and then on top of that pick up Jeremiah Love, I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're going to go defense. But if they were to do that, you're building up a pretty solid run game with Jeremiah Love, and then on top of that, having a solid tight end being able to block in Gunnar Helm. But I do agree with you that when I said it, I think he found his role. That doesn't mean he can't expand off of it.
Of course.
And I do agree that for guys to find soft spots is not an easy thing, and you kind of expect that out of Gunner. He was a senior coming out of Texas. He was a guy who played a lot of college football. So to see him find soft spots in defenses, it's not a new thing to sit here and look at. But I do think that that's going to be his primary role, is going to be a blocker first, but a safety net on these third downs. He'll play a lot of snaps for Tennessee, and I don't think he'll ever be a true tight end one in the sense of like receiving threat, but looking at the overall picture, yeah, I do. He will play a lot of snaps for Tennessee for hopefully a really long time. But
we can hope.
Let's just hope. Now, last fourth round pick for us here. Actually, the most productive out of all of them, tied for touchdowns, most yards out of the three. Alec Iomanner. Ethan, man, I've got my thoughts on him.
This is a very, very interesting topic that we could honestly talk about for a long time. Alec Iomanner, coming out of college, was inconsistent with his route running. Is inconsistent with his ability to catch the ball, which somewhat showed up this year.
Yeah, he led the team.
There was a lot of times
with 5. So
I think the place I looked at said 4, but honestly, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Still a lot of drives.
There was a lot of times where he should have come down with the ball in crucial moments. But when he got his hands on the ball and he was feeling it, I mean, it was incredible to watch. I mean, let's just go back to the Cam Ward's first touchdown of his career. He's getting stuffed at the line. The cornerback's holding him. He finds a way to get out and go outside the route, and Cam sees him, separates, amazing, over their body catch. I mean, it was beautiful, and you could start to see the beginning of the chemistry. And of course, there was. I mean, I think the first 5 weeks of the season is when most of the production for him came through, and I mean, sort of dropped off a cliff. Came back when the coaching staff was eventually fired, and his production started going back up. Again, what more can you ask for a fourth round pick 130, 136? This was just incredible. 41 receptions, 515 yards, 4 touchdowns, played in 16 games. He's the biggest coin flip, in my opinion. I feel like the other two are going to be good, and they've reached their floor. Their floor is here. Alec Iomanner, because he's not the greatest separator, because he's a little. I've heard it's because he's a Canadian football player that they didn't prioritize routes as much when he was coming up in school. It was. I've heard that multiple times from draft guys. I don't know.
Hating against our friendly neighbors up north, man. What the heck, dude?
That's just what I've heard. I've heard that they didn't prioritize as much route running development, and so he's got a lot to work on with that. And our new receivers coach may come in here and help him out with that. Who knows? But I feel like his ceiling is so much higher than these other twos. It's insane. But his floor is so much lower. I think Alec Iomanner has the potential to be just a little bit more talented Nick Westbrook-Akine. And I think if I were to hedge my bets and stay safe with it, I just have a feeling that when more talented receivers come in, he's going to get phased out. I hope not. I really hope not, because there were some incredible moments, some helmet catches, some crazy catch. Beautiful. But I wrote down earlier he has the highest chance of decreased workload, especially if we bring in maybe an overhauled receiving room for the free agency and the draft. But then again, he could just work his ass off and may develop into a great player. I have no idea. This is the biggest, strangest one. I want to hear your thoughts on him, because from an outside perspective, it must be different. But to me, I loved watching him play. But there were so many moments where I was like, dang, come on. It's like I didn't feel that with the other two. Alec was definitely the most frustrating one to watch. at certain
Yeah,
times.
and I think that's because he would I think by far Cam's favorite target. He had 89 targets, which was the most out of all the pass catchers, and I think that's where some of that inconsistency shows up. I think it was just I'm trying to think of the math in my head, but it was like just above 50% of his targets went for catches. I know 4 or 5, however many he was really high on the drops for this season. I saw 5. I know you saw 4. He dropped a lot more passes than he probably should have, and I did agree with you at first whenever I was first looking like really getting into the deep dive on Alec, where it was like, yeah, I think out of all of these guys, he's probably gonna get phased out. But my only thing with Chim is that he his role is gonna be so limited in what he can do offensively because he is like a true deep threat. Run it down the field, like just run, go sprint down the field and see what happens. See if you can get behind everybody and hope that Cam can get it to you. Is pretty much what I see his role in the offense being because, maybe somebody who can take a couple of jet sweeps, touch passes and things like that. But outside of that, I just don't see a huge role for him offensively. With Alec, I do agree that his floor is low, but I think his ceiling is a a good wide receiver too. I don't think he's ever going to be somebody who you look at and say this guy's got future Pro Bowl, All Pro wide receiver, true standalone number one X wide receiver. I don't think he's ever going to be that, and I don't think that was ever the expectation for him. But I think it was 515 yards, was tied for the team leading touchdowns with 4, and obviously was Cam's favorite target, was targeted the most out of everybody. I think that shows the rapport, and I think it sort of shows what he could be. I think, like you said, I do think that with more talent, he'll probably fall down to like a wide receiver 3. Won't get nearly as many offensive snaps, maybe 10 to 15, maybe 20 snaps a game. But I think his ceiling is gonna be like a good wide receiver 2, an average wide receiver 2, somebody who you would feel comfortable throwing out there and saying, yeah, I feel comfortable with him going out there and being
If your one gets hurt, can you win a game? Is essentially like what a number 2 receiver needs. That's a responsibility he needs to have. If your number 1 gets hurt, can you go out there and can you still create production in the wide receiver room? And I think Ellick has the potential to do that. I just don't know. I mean, he did it this year sometimes. I mean, and you also have to think a lot of his production happened late in games as well. I know there was the only long throw of explosive throw of the day against the Texans the first time we played them when they shut us out was to Kyle Manor down the field. Um, he's this is such a hard one to evaluate. I love him. I love watching him play. He looks like a receiver. He looks like he's just got a big frame. Like you said, Cam's favorite target. I love watching him play. I don't have the feeling that I do with the other two with Ellick. I definitely feel like
yeah,
he's going to be a wide receiver 3 or 4. Like a Nick Westbrook-Ikine role. That's what his role was. Nick Westbrook-Ikine was thrust into the number 1, number 2 receiver role whenever D-Hop was hurt and got traded away. And he thrived at like 700 yards, his best season ever. And I think that's what Alec Manor is. I
yeah,
feel like if you have him alone, he can still get production, but he is never going to beat out more talented receivers unless he really develops his route running. Because I've just heard. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert. I'm going to listen to people who are smarter than me and do this for a living. They say that is his the biggest need for improvement, other than quit dropping the ball. But that's just
he's
what
got
are
to
you
get
going
on
to
the
do?
jug machine, I guess. But no, I agree with you, and that's why I'm saying like I think an average wide receiver 2 is his absolute ceiling because if he does get into better with his route running and more consistent with his catching and not making those concentration drops, I do think he can be somebody who if a wide receiver 1 gets hurt, you can ask to go out there. It's like, hey, can you know get a little bit of can you produce as a wide receiver 1? And I think he has the opportunity to do that, but he's just got to get better in those 2 facets to have a chance at doing it. But Yeah, I think with Alec, he was definitely my lowest out of the three, just because with Jim, all pro, and then with Gunner, you don't really expect a whole lot of a tight end too, but to see what he was able to accomplish statistically was, a really good feat, and I think it shows the future, but you hope for a higher ceiling with him. Hope you see more from him year over year. But with Alec, I think it's a B plus for me. It's still a good pick. He's still over that 500-yard marker as a fourth round pick. 4 touchdowns is still good offensively as a fourth round pick. And this is the biggest thing is that these are all day 3 picks, right? The teams have had multiple opportunities to take them. They don't. So any production that you get from them on the offensive side of the ball is going to be more than I think what you're generally expecting. And to see the production that these 3 guys had, in the sense of 10 touchdowns combined between the 3, with 2 of them having 4 touchdowns, is fantastic for fourth round picks. Now, are they going to be guys who you're going to be looking at 5 years later and saying, yeah, I'm still glad that we have them on our team? Who knows, right? And I think out of all 3 of these guys, Outlook is going to be the one who you can look to replace here in the somewhat near future, kind of closer to when his contract ends, which I think should end in 2029, I think. But either way, just basing off of this year, I think it's a B plus. I'm teetering on an A minus, but just those consistency issues, the drops, I can't put him any higher. I think it's a B plus. I still think it's a really good pick, but for where he was drafted, but still, it's just you can't really rate him any higher than that, just because there were those problems with the route running, with the drops, just the consistency as a whole. He needs to get better at, and we'll see if he can get better at it as he is able to develop a little bit under Dayball and things like that. But we'll just have to kind of wait and see to really get a fair evaluation. But just for the rookie season as a whole, I like a B plus.
I've got a B minus on him. Literally the only reason is because those drops were very frustrating, and I feel there was one throw that came through. He was streaking, and he just all he had to do was put his hands up. Like I'm saying that as if I'm in the game, but I'm telling you, it was like this, like that, like over his head. Like he just had to put his hands up, and he just didn't put his hands up, and the ball just went right over his head. And it's like, okay, well, that was a first down. Awesome. And it was just there was a lot of moments like that where it's just like if something clicks, he's going to be really good.
Yeah.
But it's you don't see that super often. There's not many players I can think of like where they were at this low of production and they had these issues and I've seen them like completely transform. Like I mean, if you think about Tyreek Hill and how he was super unrefined coming out of college,
Yeah.
he was the fastest man on the football field. It's kind of different when it comes to his ability to get better. You know, I like B minus. I like where he's at. I loved this round. This was amazing production and all you could ask for. And when it comes to the future, your guys have experience.
Yeah.
They have chemistry. I would say, especially where Alec and Jim are probably going to be on the depth chart. Hopefully, it's going to be a little bit lower. Having chemistry top to bottom is amazing. That's all you can ask for. I think Borgonzi nailed this round out of the park. There's a lot of experience in our draft room. They're still there. I think all the pieces are still there. Borgonzi, the draft is the hardest thing to get right, I will say. There's just a lot of, question marks.
Yeah.
But to be this consistent in the fourth round, it was incredible. It was incredible. I loved this round. They were the most fun part to watch. These young guys, it's been great. So, yeah, B minus on Alec, A on Jim, and then B plus on Gunnar Helm for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think they knocked this round out of the park. I think that was just an apparent thing for anybody. If you look at the production these guys had. Even getting out onto the field at all in a meaningful manner was going to be a win, albeit most of the time it's a win because you didn't build a roster very well. And I know I've said that, but it doesn't make it any less true. But to have them get on the field the way that they did and produce in the way that they did, they knocked this Titans Borgonzi knocked this round out of the park, and I do agree with you for the most part. I think Chim's an A plus. I think Gunner is an A, and I think Alec is a B plus, and that's just based off
Or
of
I
what they
said
did
B.
this
I
year.
said
And
B for Gunnar Helm. Sorry, I said B.
oh, okay, I thought you okay, but either way, right? I like this round a lot, and I think these can be pieces, glue guys. And I know we've talked about that in previous episodes where when you build a roster, you can't all have superstars everywhere because sometimes they don't mesh. You can't afford them, all the any of the above. But you get those superstars paired around some of these glue guys, and these three right here are about as picture perfect of glue guys as you can imagine because you have Alec who's probably going to end up, nobody truly hits their ceiling in the NFL. He's probably going to end up being, a wide receiver 3, somebody who you can, rely on to get a couple of catches a game, about 20 to 15, like 15 to 20 snaps a game. With Jim, he's going to, I think it's probably going to be by his 3rd or 4th season, he is going to be designated as like a pure return guy. I don't think he's going to get very many snaps, if at all, on the offensive side of the ball. He might get 5 to 10 a game, and he might on those snaps he might get touches on all 10 of those snaps, unless of course injuries are random at any point. But he's probably going to get 5 to 10 snaps a game, barring injuries, and he's going to probably get touches on most of those because when you get a guy in there like that, you want to give him the ball in space. You want to get returners the ball in space and see what they can do offensively. I think that's going to end up being his role. But I really liked what you said about Gunner being, the guy out of all 3 of these to be an actual factor when it comes to like a true factor offensively, because he has the best chance of being a true tight end 1. And will we see that next year after? Kind of depends on what they decide to do with Chig. But either way, they knocked this round out of the park. And you can't say that for a whole lot of other teams. When you get to day 3, sometimes that could be a really important part of your draft because that's building up glue guys. And I think they did a really good job with these 3 guys. So I had an A plus for Jim, A for Gunner, and then a B plus for Alec. But I think now we're going to attack, right now that we're done with that, we're going to attack the NFL honors because this will be going out on Wednesday. It'll be night before NFL honors, I believe. I might be more on about that. I have no idea. Either way, it's supposed to come out later this week. We did talk about NFL, the MVP, already, so we can talk about that again here really quick.
Okay. So when talking about NFL honors, I hate talking about NFL honors. I really do.
It's a crapshoot.
I honestly think I think everything's a popularity contest, but it really is. When it comes to NFL honors, there are very few things that I think actually are objective anymore, and this is not one of them. But if it were me trying to be as realistic as possible, other than MVP, because I'm just sticking with that just because it makes me mad if I think about Drake May winning, I'm going with Matthew Stafford winning MVP, as we've already talked about.
That makes sense. And, the stats do lean in Matt's favor. I think he probably should win it, but it's probably going to end up being Drake May. I think we both kind of agreed on that. That, with what he was able to do, being the leader, the focal point of the offense, the quarterback of the offense, obviously, for a team that went from 3-14 to 14-3, and I know playoffs aren't supposed to be a part of it, and if they were, that would just tank his case because he's been awful in the playoffs the entire time. I mean, the defense has carried them completely, but leading the team to the Super Bowl, which is not supposed to count, but it absolutely will, it's probably going to be Drake May. It should be Stafford, but it's probably going to end up being Drake.
We also need to factor in that Matthew Stafford has Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams and Sean McVay calling his offense, so it's a little bit of a cheat code. But I still feel like Matthew Stafford has done more himself for the team. the Patriots feel like exactly like the team we want to be. It's just a bunch of glue guys with a couple talent pieces here and there, and they are just mean.
Well,
And that's the team I want to be like. I wonder who's coaching them.
yeah, it's like a pretty good coach in that in that
All
system as
right.
well.
But for Defensive Player of the Year, this one is
It's the
going to be
easiest thing to pick.
unanimous.
It's
This is
easiest.
not difficult. It is going to be Myles Garrett of the Cleveland Browns.
I don't think we need to take a whole lot of time on this. He broke the single season sack record. I think that's literally. You can say whatever you want about Joe Burrow, whether you think he went down or not. It was pissing me off watching that game because he should have had about 5 sacks, but Joe Burrow was getting rid of the ball in like half a second. So when he actually had the chance to go get him, Joe just went down. So or whatever you want to think on that. He should have had like 5 sacks that game, but Joe Burrow's pissing me off because he kept getting rid of it in half a second. But yes, it's gonna
He's
be
a Jedi, bro. He's insane. Joe Burrow is insane. What I'd do.
It's
But
frustrating, but it's Myles Garrett. It's Miles. We don't even
yeah,
need to talk about this anymore. He broke the single
Myles
season
Garrett.
sack record. It's Myles Garrett. So let's move over to
Offensive
yeah.
Player of the Year. My pick, which honestly is a toss up between two players for me. You may disagree. Might be a little crazy, but it may be. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just gonna say it. I think it's Puka Nacua. Um, he is just one of the best receivers I've seen play the game in a long time. He's always open. He makes crazy catches. He's a big run after catch guy. It's just he is fun to watch, and I think without Puka Nacua on that team, they don't make it nearly as far as they do. My other guy was Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah,
I feel like
it's a 2 horse race in that one, because I think the rest of them it's Drake May, uh,
which Drake May being on there could indicate that he's not going to win MVP because I know sometimes that's a little weird when they do it like that. They'll give you a backup award. It's like the MVP runner up. They'll give you the offensive player of the year sometimes. I don't know. It's
yeah,
weird.
but I just think he's gonna win it. I really just think Drake's gonna win it. But with this one, I mean, the same thing that's going against Stafford because with obviously Puka being a big wide receiver, obviously Devonta Adams and Sean McVay and things like that. Having those guys on your team, same thing can kind of get put towards Puka, where he's like, oh, he has Matt Stafford throwing him the football, and that guy's going to probably end up being a Hall of Famer. You have a Hall of Famer throwing you the football, so I get why you pick him. I think it's going to be JSN. Sort of, not
I hope
necessarily.
it's JSN.
Not necessarily
I
for the
love
same
JSN.
reason of Drake May, because the stats are very comparable. I think Puka's in first in yards by like 30 or 40 receiving yards. I think they're both tied at 10 touchdowns, but I think it's going to be JSN. Just the breakout year he had, finally getting that breakout year, and just some of the spectacular catches he made. Like with Puka, he doesn't necessarily have to make a whole lot of those spectacular catches because he's always open, and that's the same thing for JSN, but still. And I know playoffs aren't supposed to count, but the catch he had against the Rams, just one-handed, it literally stuck to him like there was a bunch of glue on his hand. The ball didn't move at all. It was unbelievable. And I know playoffs aren't supposed to count, but I do think it's going to be JSN over Puka, sort of for the same reason. That same sort of, indicative. He has Matt Stafford throwing with the football, and with how good Sam Darnold has been over these past couple of seasons with the Vikings and now with the Seahawks, the same thing can't be said with the career that Matt Stafford's had. But I do think that it's going to be. I think it'll be JSN, but I won't be mad with the Puka pick. I don't think it's going to be Christian McCaffrey or Drake May or I don't even know who the other person is. I think there's supposed to be 5 finalists, but it's really just a 2-horse race, and I think everybody's eyes, and I think it'll be JSN.
All right. Moving on to Offensive Rookie of the Year. Or what graphic do you have? Is that the one you have next?
Oh, I don't have any graphics for this. We're just letting it
run. Oh, okay.
So
My fault.
I did not
Work
do
harder.
anything for that. No, it's just the intro screen pretty much because
Teteroa McMillan.
Yeah.
Teteroa McMillan is going to win. Broke 1,000. It was between him and Egbuka for a long time, but when you break that 1,000-yard mark, it solidifies it for you.
Yeah, I think
I think having Bryce Young as your quarterback as well, comparing to Baker Mayfield, also kind of leans in his favor. Not that they're going to factor that in too much. Um, but yeah, I think Ted McMillan is going to win. He was a great pick. I wanted him out of school, but can't have everyone when you get the number one overall pick.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it'll be McMillan. The thing with me about this, it's funny because you look when you, I feel like you look at this, 5 weeks into the season, and it's like, okay, offensive rookie of the year's locked in. It's Egbuka because he was just going insane week after week. But then once Tet finally got past that touchdown drought, because I swear it was like, I think it took him like 7 or 8 weeks until he finally got
It
his
was a
first
long time.
touchdown. Then I think he had 7 touchdowns on the season. Obviously, like you said, broke the 1,000-yard mark, and they made the playoffs compared to the Bucks, compared to Tampa Bay. They didn't make the playoffs. I think that's going to factor into it because that's still regular season. Going out and having the better season and being the number one wide receiver as a rookie on a playoff team. I think that's going to get. I think it'll make him offensive player or offensive rookie of the year.
Indeed. All right, defensive rookie of the year, the one that I probably know the least about. I went Carson Swessinger. I saw the most about him. I saw the most uh, things about him. He seems like a great linebacker. Uh, he had a few pretty good tackles that I saw. Um, Pretty instinctive to the ball. Carson Swessinger. Just seems like
Yeah,
he's a great player. I don't really know much about any of the players that are playing.
because I want to
Really,
say he led the Browns in tackles. I think as a rookie on a, I would say out of all the guys on that list, I think there's a kid from the Falcons. Abdul Carter was a part of it.
James
Um,
Pierce Jr.
James Pierce, so a
The,
couple guys from the Falcons. I know there was two. I think Xavier Watts was another one with the safety. I think it's going to be him because I think I want to say he led all rookies in tackles and he led the Browns in tackles, which was a good defense, like I said. And also, like you said, defensive wise, this you kind of expect Abdul Carter to be it, but he had a bit of a lackluster season. I think only 4 sacks is what I saw. So
he was a factor, but he didn't have the explosiveness that you would have expected from the what was he number 2 overall pick
he was 2 or 3, I
or
think.
no, yeah, 3.
It
He
was
was
a
number
top
3 overall
five,
pick.
a top five pick. I think it was the first edge rusher
Travis
taken
Hunter
off
was
the board.
2,
Yeah, he was the
and
first
then
edge rusher taken off the board. So
that's who I thought the Titans were going to draft for a long time until Cam. I fell in love with Cam, so um,
yeah,
I thought he was going to be Abdul Carter to the Titans. I was hoping we were going to trade back. I was kind of waiting for the. I guess I would have been waiting for this year's draft, which would have been awful.
I
Uh,
saw a post that this is probably going to be one of the worst quarterback drafts we've seen in a really long time. Like
Nothing will top that Kenny Pickett first
that was bad.
round. Fernando Mendoza is infinitely a better quarterback than Kenny Pickett, so it's already better. I mean, Malik Neighbors was in that draft. Uh, Not Malik Neighbors, idiot. Malik Willis. And then you
Yeah.
have, oh, dude, what's his name from the Falcons? He's played at
Oh my god.
Cincinnati.
I know who you're talking about. Uh,
Whatever. He sucked.
I know who you're
Um,
talking about because he was on that Cincinnati team with Sauce Gardner that made the playoff and then got well, actually, they didn't really get torched by Georgia. It wasn't a close game, but it wasn't a bad game either. But
yeah,
yeah,
it wasn't a bad game.
it's a
They deserved to be there,
yeah,
but it
no, without a
was
doubt. But yeah,
yeah.
no,
It was
it's bad. It's not a very good quarterback class, and it's crazy because going into the season, we're like, this is going to be one of the best quarterback classes ever. Cade Klubnik, Drew Aller, Arch Manning, Jackson Arnold. Whenever before everybody finally decided they wanted to realize that he's not very good at playing quarterback. John Mateer maybe, depending on the season that he had. It was supposed to be, Dante Moore as well could have potentially left which, by the way, we already talked about it, but the fact that he decided not to be the second overall pick and just to not play with the Jets and probably be a top 20 pick instead is,
saved his career.
yeah, it did. It fully did. And it's just funny, but yeah, it's just not a very good quarterback class this year. And I know we were talking about defensive rookie of the year, but just not really a whole lot to go off of. There wasn't anything overly exciting about any of these guys. Like nobody was over here really doing a whole lot. It was a much better draft for offensive talent, I felt like. Outside of Travis Hunter, which then again, he had his best game as a wide receiver and then was out for the rest of the year, which made my fantasy team cry. But still, are we doing comeback player of the year? Because I'll be totally real with you. I have no idea.
Yes.
All right, let me look at this really quick.
I've also done coach of the year and assistant coach of the year. I have my picks for those as well.
Assistant coach of the year.
Yeah.
It's like I was going to say something bad. That seems... I wouldn't even know who to begin with that. But...
I just picked based off of who got a head coaching job. And, I knew his name. So, just picked him.
I think it'll probably... Okay. Okay, I've got comeback player of the year.
I picked McCaffrey.
I think it'll probably be that. Him or Dak.
He
just kind of who I'm thinking between the two.
Dak had a great year, but everyone hates Dak, so it's not going to be Dak. It's going to be McCaffrey. McCaffrey came back like nothing even happened. So
yeah, he was literally the offense because half of their offense died. So
exactly. So it's going to be McCaffrey. I don't even think that's a question. Coach of the year, I do have my pick. Do you have yours?
Yeah, looking at this list, I think it's a two-way race, and I know who I'm going to pick, and Titans fans are going to hate it.
Yep, I picked Mike Vrabel. You can't have a 3-14 team turn into a 14-3 team or whatever it was, and not be the coach of the year. Don't worry, Titans fans. We've talked about this. Vrabel got lucky. Vrabel got lucky that he walked into a situation with solid talent that was just a complete mess. He could just walk in there and make it orderly. He had a lot of talent there, bring in a couple guys. He had an air about him. And I've mentioned this before already, too. His assistant coach, his offensive coordinator, who has no risk, because this is the biggest thing for these guys, is if your offensive coordinator who led your team to success leaves, you have to start all over. Josh McDaniels is not getting a head coaching job ever again. No. Him and Vrabel are going to be there and win so many games together, and he's never going to get another job. And Vrabel doesn't have to worry about it anymore. He can hire his best friend, his buddy, and he's a good offensive play caller. Finally, he was here for 6 years and couldn't do it here, but he goes to the Patriots for one, and he can do it immediately. I love Vrabel. I still wish he was here, but to say that he did everything right in Tennessee is just a lie. It's a lie. He wouldn't have won any games here if he was the coach this year. He wouldn't. He wouldn't have won any games. It wouldn't have changed. Our offense would have still been bad. Our special teams would have still been bad. He would have never hired Bones Fossil. He would have never drafted or played any of these fourth-round rookies. We would have been playing guys off the street just because they've had a year of experience compared to our rookies because he couldn't play rookies. I mean, look at Travion Henderson, who he didn't play for months just because he's a rookie. And guess what? He's the best player on the team. It's so annoying. Vrabel is a lucky coach. He's a great coach, but he's a lucky coach.
I think it'll look a lot different for New England next year because I think they're like top 5 in schedules for like top 5 hardest schedules because they have the same thing as the Dolphins, which is I forget specifically what it is, but I think it's the AFC West is a part of it, and you're going to get a healthy Mahomes back alongside a good Chargers team who's hopefully going to be healthy. Won't have a toothpick and a turnstile at the tackle spots, and then the Broncos obviously was the number 1 seed. So either way, they're going to have a really tough schedule next year. But yeah, it's gonna be Vrabel. I think this is one of those. It's either a two horse race for for this whole honors. It's either a 2-horse race or it's just unanimous because most of these guys they have to have 5 finalists for them, even though most of the time we already know who it is or know who it could be. It's not 5 people. It's going to be 2 at most. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be Vrabel. Mike Macdonald could be there. I could see him getting votes as well because of, just this entire Seahawks team and being able to also
Kyle Shanahan is a possibility. I mean, Kyle Shanahan led his team to playoffs to a playoff win with a bunch of construction workers next to an electrical plant for,
I
12
could
weeks out of
see
the
it,
season.
but like I said, I really just think it's a two-horse race between those two because you have one team who was the number one seed, and then another team who's like another team, one team whose coach led them to the number one seed, and then the other team whose coach took them from 3-14 to 4-13 in a unanimous, division title. And I know playoffs aren't supposed to matter, beating a dead horse, but he still led them to the Super Bowl too. So
People say
that could
that
be a
it
part of it.
literally counts. That's why either have this vote before the playoffs or just
Yeah,
make the playoffs count because it doesn't like, oh, we're just the decision makers. We don't watch the playoffs
it's
right before the
stupid.
Super Bowl. Are you kidding me? Yes, you do. You have. There's no way you're just like, yep, that team made it to the playoffs. That's it's just
And
not
I
how that
mean,
works. That's not
making
how
the
people
playoffs,
work.
I know making the playoffs does matter because that is a part of the regular season, but these are all supposed to be regular season awards. That's why they
No, I'm
have
saying like after the
NFL
regular season
MVP.
ends, like everything is decided, the seeding is done. Don't go into the playoffs. Don't. This shouldn't be before the Super Bowl. This should be
Yeah.
a after. I mean, I realize, or voting should be done. If voting isn't done before
I
the
don't know if
playoffs,
that
then it's
is.
just a travesty.
I don't know if that's the case or not, honestly. I have no clue on that, but yeah, it's done. I know playoffs aren't supposed to count, but they do. I mean, you're right, they do. But let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Assistant Coach of the Year, probably the
Clint
most useless award that I think I could have heard of. There's also one that's like a Protector of the Year. That's stupid as hell. That's just a dumb award. Who cares, right? I mean, that's just stupid. Like, you
Yeah,
want
it's
the
dumb.
Player of the Years, the Rookies of the Year. I'm okay with Coach of the Year and Comeback Player of the Year because, obviously this is kind of going back to the Alex Smith whenever his leg got just mangled up, basically just looked awful, just completely terrible. Still have nightmares of that, seeing his leg all, just deranged.
It's pretty tough.
But, comeback player and then Coach of the Year as well. But, I mean, I get wanting to, give assistant coaches their due, and I do agree with you. I think it's going to be Clint Kubiak, new Raiders head coach, Clint Kubiak. So that Raiders offense could be kind of good next year.
Could be. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty good setup.
Yeah, you got Brock Bowers,
Hopeful for
Ashton
them.
Genty, Fernando Mendoza more than likely. You get a decent offensive line. Who knows?
I was about to say,
Lord
beef up
knows.
that offensive line.
Yeah. And I know it's not supposed to be based off of previous years, but making Geno Smith look like a competent quarterback, yeah, that'll get you an award, and I think it'll be him. The only other person I could think of it potentially being, I had it written on here. I had it, the all the guys. Is Vance Joseph. That defense
Yeah,
was so good this
Broncos
year.
defense was nutty.
But it's probably gonna end up being Clint Kubiak because you look at these three guys, Josh McDaniels. I mean, that offense was fine, but it wasn't what it was not what the Seahawks were, and then vice versa, it was not what the Broncos defense was. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's pretty much it. NFL honors coming up here. This will go live on Wednesday morning. So NFL honors I think is Thursday. Might be Saturday. I have no idea, to be honest with you. I know it's sometime this week. I think the Pro Bowl is this Thursday. So either way, it's before the Super Bowl. We've got our picks in. That's all for episode 6. We'll have the rest of the rookie report card coming up here on Friday for that 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks. Diving into it, I don't know about you, but I actually found a lot more to talk about with these guys than I was kind of expecting to be honest with you.
Indeed, I'm happy. I'm hype. I'm ready for
Yeah,
this next episode.
this will be the rest,
Also,
kind of putting this season behind us, which I think everybody's kind of ready to do at this point.
guys, I want to say thank you for the comments and the views and the arguing under the uniform video.
We're recording this on
Um,
Sunday, the Sunday before, so we have
it's
seen
been
all
a
of that.
it's been a whole lot
pretty
of fun.
I know they've come out with the Zach Cohen. I think I'm gonna get his name right. I'm gonna get it off the top of my head and not question myself. Zach Cohen, right? That's
Yeah,
his name.
Zach Cohen.
Had come out with another post saying they're gonna go with the sword logo. That's pretty rad. I know a lot of the comments underneath there were saying like getting rid of the flames suck, and I agree with you. But if they're gonna replace the flames with anything, going with the sword logo looks sick. I think it
The
looks
sword logo's
cool.
been around for a long time, so it's
Yeah,
not like an unknown thing. And if you want, people want symmetrical, people want a little more minimal. That's it. And guess what? It looks gnarly. It looks
Oh yeah.
awesome.
Oh
Let's
yeah.
do it. I love the flames, but yeah, I wouldn't be too mad about the sword. It's definitely preferred over just a single T with the stars for me.
Yeah. No.
And
No.
maybe we'll come up with a part two a little more detailed as we get
Once
more
some more
updates.
details come out, and I think if they do decide to go with those jerseys and the helmet this year, then we'll know by the time draft season truly gets underway. But
Yeah.
I mean, we'll figure something out. Now, we already talked about this, why they don't wait until 2027 when the new stadium comes out. I don't know, but
I've seen stuff where it's like they just want to take pictures, have them ready for in the stadium and stuff, and I'm like, well,
that's stupid. You have
they
a whole
are the
offseason
team.
to do
They
that.
have
You have the whole
access to the
offseason to do
jerseys.
that. That's
Yeah,
stupid.
I don't get it. I
Like,
don't know.
that's just dumb.
Uh,
You're acting like they're
yeah,
acting like that takes a full fucking year to do. It takes like maybe a month to get all that done.
yeah,
That's stupid.
yeah. I don't know. That's just what I saw some people saying, and I don't agree with it. I just feel like maybe they want to test the waters with it at the stadium with a little excitement, and then you know, it's a whole fresh new look when they go into the new one. I don't
Yeah,
know.
like I get it, but still, should be, you know, all unveiled at the same time, make things clean and concise. But either way, that's all for episode 6. We'll be back with the rest of the Ratin rookies here on Friday. For Ethan Jacobs to my right, I'm Ryan Smith. Y'all have a great one. We'll see you next time.